y'all, it's Zoe and welcome back to the video on my channel. Hey y'all, Editing Zoe here. I just realized that the entirety of this video, my lips are extremely chapped. I have since put on chapstick, but because I do not want to refilm this entire 15-minute video, please just don't pay attention. It's so embarrassing. I'm so embarrassed, but yeah, okay, let's get on with the video. Today, as you can tell by the title, I am going to be spilling all of the Fulbright tea. So in other words, I'm going to be sharing everything that I learned as an ETA, specifically in the Fulbright program. So if you're interested in this program or just being a foreign English teacher in Taiwan in general, maybe this video might be good for you, but just know it is specific to the Fulbright program. So I divided it into 3 sections: before you go, while you're there, and now that I am back. Although the now that I am back, I don't think there's as much, but just like so that you can kind of see what it's like before you start your grant, during your grant, and after your grant. So that's kind of why I divided it up that way. Let's get into this video. Okay, so first, timelines differ for each country. So some of my friends who did Fulbright programs in other countries, they found out sooner than I did, or they found out later than I did. I found out I was a semi-finalist for Taiwan in January, but then it wasn't until the end of March when I found out if I got in. And so for other countries, the timeline might be a little faster. It just really depends. And then specifically for the Fulbright Taiwan, you should just be prepared that communication isn't great, but you can still find what you need. So if you watched my ETA's guide video, I mentioned the Discord. It was created by some 23-24 ETAs, and it is now kind of been transformed into a 24-25 space. So that was really helpful, just being able to bounce questions and ideas off of people who have been in the program before. So I highly recommend just talking to someone who's been in the program before, and they will help you a lot. Important visa-related emails and travel arrangements were made throughout the months of May and June. A lot of things came to your email, so you just always have to be on your emails. My coordinators from my cohort sent an introduction email about 20 days before I had to leave. And then there was also a Slack before there was a Discord, and this Slack is for everyone. So people in other countries use this Slack. So I also highly recommend potentially looking at the Slack. It's just, I think because the Fulbright admin, they can only help us to a certain extent, that having this Discord and Slack and talking to other grantees who can maybe share a little bit more than admin is willing to is very helpful. And then during the pre-departure orientation, this happened about 2 weeks beforehand, and they weren't able to do a Q&A because there were so many questions. So they had like a little questions doc where they typed, or we could type questions and they would type the responses, and they were helpful in telling us what was going to happen when we got to Taiwan. But what I noticed was on that document, they didn't really answer the questions specifically. They really only answered them like more in general, which is why, you know, having a Discord is more helpful because they can answer like those really specific questions. And honestly, I think a lot of times they don't answer the questions because they may not know the answers. So having someone who experienced it is really helpful. Okay, so another thing you should know is that they're not going to give you the schedule when you get there until you get there. Like, even I didn't really know what we were doing or where we were going, and I kind of just followed the group around. And I am going to make a video on travel day, what's going to happen when you get there, etc. But you should also know that it's just schedules and coordinating things is just a mess with Fulbright in general. Even with the like big conferences with everyone, even then it can get a little chaotic, and so it can be a little confusing. I was really confused with what exactly we were doing. They don't really communicate that well on what you're doing. They just kind of expect you to follow them, which is kind of what I did. So I definitely wish they were a little bit more clear about what was going on and what would happen when we get there. Like, I kind of wish they sent us a little itinerary. I didn't know we would be waiting in the airport for hours, things like that. But honestly, just take it one step at a time. There will be people to greet you at the airport, so just kind of listen to them, go where they're going, and make sure you have Line downloaded, because you can always reach out to people through Line. When you get to Taiwan, there's always going to be like the customs and immigration form, but you're most likely going to be placed on a flight with a ton of other Fulbrighters who will be in the same boat. So you can be confused together. Hopefully there will be people that will be there that have done this before. Also, this isn't, I don't know if this is really like Fulbright tea. It's probably something I should have added to the packing video, honestly, but I would recommend having a stamp book, because there are stamps everywhere in Taiwan, at the MRT stations, things like that, and when you travel to other cities in Taiwan. So it's really nice to get a little stamp and just kind of log where you go. After you get there, again, they don't really talk to you or tell you what's going on. They were very helpful with helping us get settled, giving us our SIM card, and helping us with the ARC, but they don't tell you anything about what's going on or what you're doing, and you really just have to ask them. And sometimes they do not stay on schedule at all. They went through a bunch of like, now that you've arrived, what's next? But again, if you don't know what's going on, just ask them, because they may not tell you. And then the program, it's pretty flexible. I wouldn't say it's like a blow off, but it's flexible. So you have a lot of freedom in terms of what you do after work, what you do on the weekends, and then same with orientation. Once orientation was done for the day, we could pretty much go anywhere. Even if like the inter-cohort communication is bad, like if people aren't responding, I still recommend going out there and exploring and traveling, and it's really easy to travel and do stuff in Taiwan. And again, I'm gonna make a video about that as well. So as long as you stay in the country, it's very flexible. In terms of out of country travel, they're very, very strict on that. You have to be approved to leave the country according to your contract. So for winter break, you are allowed to go out of the country for 2 weeks, and you have to fill out a form, and they have to approve it and all that. Obviously there are other situations, there are emergencies, family emergencies, things like that. However, you still need to get approval to let them know that you're leaving. Now, of course, people broke this rule. I think it was probably inevitable that people would, but you're really not supposed to travel outside of Taiwan when you're on grant. Alright, and then it may feel like you're spending a lot of money there, because when you first get there, you have to buy a bunch of stuff to help you move in and settle in, like bedding and stuff. But when you think about it overall, Taiwan is very affordable compared to the US, and so I felt like I was spending a lot of money, and I felt like I was gonna run out of money before the first paycheck hit. But like when you think about it as a whole, the stuff that I got was a lot more affordable than if I were to buy it all in the US. So it was a little bit different for me because I was eating out a lot, because I wasn't put in an apartment, I was put in a hotel. But grocery stores, restaurants, they're all extremely affordable. And also in relation to that, just know that some places may not have microwaves, like some apartments may not have microwaves, but you can buy like a hot pad. One of my friends, actually, their school like lent them a microwave. But also, again, eating out, very affordable. Another thing I noticed is that there are different definitions for suite. So I think they might have promoted it as like suite style living, which for Taipei was true. Basically, they had a shared common space, and then everyone had their own separate bedroom and a shared bathroom. So that I would say is like suite style. But for us, we had studios, and I think they might have called them suites. I don't really remember why I wrote that, but yeah, you're basically in an apartment. A lot of them are going to be like actual like US definition suite style. We're the only cohort that I know of that really had studios. And then during the joint site orientation, the breaks are not super long, especially when there's food, which can make it kind of difficult because the lines are going to be super, super long. But you get to meet a lot of cool people, and you get nice accommodations. That's the one thing that Fulbright does do, is that they give you nice accommodations for like conferences and dinners and things like that. So there's that. And I'm gonna make like a timeline video of what my orientation was like. This isn't really like tea, but just know that you'll probably be using cash more than card. Sometimes your cards may not even work. Like sometimes they wouldn't accept my Discover, but they usually always accept Visa, so I would just use cash. And then public transportation is very, very easy to navigate here. You can download all the transportation apps that I talked about in my apps video. Really make sure that you have the ones that I talked about in terms of like taxiing, because again, some places don't have an MRT or an Uber, or like might have really unreliable buses. And then I would highly recommend, if you're in Taipei, New Taipei, to get the T-Pass. It's a monthly fee of about $40 for unlimited rides. And especially for New Taipei, because we live so far away from everything, it might be nice if you plan to go into the city a lot. And then be prepared for fast, crazy, chaotic drivers, because Taiwanese drivers drive really fast. They're kind of crazy, and some of the bus drivers are also kind of crazy drivers. And I've actually felt like motion sick on a bus. So if you have like motion sickness medicine, you might want to bring that with you. And then in terms of just going out and eating at restaurants, they really prefer that you pay with one check. And so I would recommend trying to keep it with one check and then splitting it amongst you. And also, tip isn't really a thing there. Tax is included in the price already, and they don't really tip. And then just know that your ARC is going to take a very, very long time, because you're gonna have to apply with your temporary address, and then once you get your school assignment, you're gonna have to renew your ARC and get the permanent one. So it's gonna take a long time to get your ARC. So just know that. In terms of going to the doctor, the coordinators are going to help you in terms of translating, but just be prepared that it's very different from Western medicine, just the way that they approach medicine. So, and then just like FSC, your school might be bad at communication in terms of telling you things. They may not tell you when a field trip is happening, if you have to come to school on a Saturday, etc. So just ask. That's one thing that I would say I wish I did more, is just ask. Ask if you're confused about something. Ask if you need clarification on scheduling and things like that. You will have an observation during your time there. Do not be stressed at all. They really like hype it up to be very stressful, the way that they talk about it, but it's not that stressful. It's basically just your coordinator and the principal. The principal may be there, but I don't think mine was, and they're just going to be in your advisor. So you have a TEFL advisor, someone who is very experienced in teaching English as a foreign language, and they're just going to be observing your lesson, and they really, really want to see co-teaching. They're going to teach you all about the different methods of co-teaching, but that's like one thing that they love. If you can demonstrate co-teaching, they will love that. But yeah, it can sound really stressful and it can sound like you're being graded, but it's mostly for the school, and your TEFL advisor will help you with advice on like how to have better lessons and stuff like that. But just be yourself, have the lesson like any other, pretend like they're not even there, and it'll be great. Yeah, so I was very nervous, but I think they made it sound a lot more scary than it was. And then in terms of exams, sometimes I had to grade exams, but most of the time I didn't. And then I would mostly help them with like their oral exams, so listening to them speak English, etc. The big thing that I wanted to talk about is just social dynamics within the cohort. It can feel kind of high schooly or middle schooly, but don't let that stop you from trying to make friends. Really just reach out. Also give it some time. Sometimes you're not going to click right away. Don't worry about the FOMO. You might get some FOMO, but that's just life. That's just how things work. But again, don't let that stop you from having fun and putting yourself out there and making friends. And finally, these are some things that I thought that I learned now that the program is over. So first, if you don't know Chinese, I don't recommend applying. If you have already applied and you got accepted, I recommend learning some basic Chinese before you go over there. And just like small conversational Chinese, mostly because if you are put in more rural areas, the chances of them speaking English are kind of low. Fulbright always pairs like Chinese speakers and non-Chinese speakers in the cohort, so you're never going to be in a cohort of no one speaks Chinese. But I think it would be helpful to know some basic Chinese, and of course you can learn while you're there. A lot of my friends who came in not knowing learned while they were there, but I still think it's kind of helpful to just know a little bit of basic Chinese. A lot of my students did not speak like good enough conversational English, so it'd be nice to be able to talk to them. Same with like the staff. Your coworkers may not speak a lot of conversational English, so it would just be nice to be able to talk to them or even just to know what they're saying. Alright, and then sometimes they may ask you about previous teaching experience. And my school wanted me to prepare lessons and teach with them. They kind of stood to the side and let me take over, but every school will be different, and coming in with a tutoring background, I didn't really have experience like full on teaching, but I learned pretty quickly, and obviously every day was a new day. And even after my first year, there are so many things that I would do differently or change if I were to repeat the lesson. So if you want me to make like a separate channel on like ESL stuff, I can do that as well. You might feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I'm just gonna tell you now, Fulbright chose you for a reason. You are meant to be here, and it's a learning curve. Everything is a learning experience, and I think you're gonna have lots of fun. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask other ETAs for advice. My cohort had this whole little resource hub where we all came together and shared resources we had for certain lessons, because a lot of us shared the same books. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask for help, and yeah, good luck with your Fulbright teaching experience. Alright, so that's pretty much it for this video. I don't know, maybe spilling the tea was kind of an over-exaggeration, but at least you know a little bit more about what it's like to be an ETA. Overall, it's going to be a really once-in-a-lifetime experience. One that it's really hard to put into a video. You just kind of have to live it. But I'm so excited for you to have this journey, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. So yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!